Cool. Should we move into the ethics thing? I'm very eager to move into that.
Let's not miss the opportunity when we have such a guest today.
So let me set up a bit, and I can speak about some research project we're doing at Peltarian, and we're working with medical data like journal text, patient journal text, for example, and then trying to use AI for doing things like trying to predict should we prescribe antibiotics or not, for example. And then today's AI can perhaps make a prediction, but it can't really explain well, but we can improve the explainability, and that's actually one of the research fields we're spending a lot of time with. But there are a lot of problems with working with sensitive data like this. Of course, we don't want to endanger any kind of integrity, privacy problems with this type of data. And we certainly don't want to make like AI making a decision that is based on like biases and the wrong kind of decision. And perhaps we can just start the discussion from a very philosophical point of view. And let me set up the trolley problem. Perhaps some of you out there have heard about this, but it's basically the idea that you have a train coming down the track, and you're standing beside the track, and you can see that there are 5 people tied up to the track in some down a path down the track, and you can see they will basically be killed. But you're standing by the switch, so you can potentially flip the switch. The train takes another side track, and then it's only one person tied to the track. Now you have to make the decision: should you flip the switch or not? And there are a number of like moral considerations here. Have you heard about this problem?
Yes.
What's your initial thought? Should the person flip the switch or not?
Well, that's a question, because if I say yes now, it does it make me a potential murderer? Mm-hmm. Because that's really what's happening to that person.
Exactly.
Taking one's life by purpose. Or if you don't do anything, you can always say, well, I didn't kill them, it was the train. Mm. But the philosophical question here is, do you see what's going to happen? Aren't you responsible then? Anyway?
Aren't you equally responsible for
if
taking no action at all?
Yeah, doing nothing. And if you are taking this to today's topic, if we don't use AI in public sector to, help humans have a better life in Sweden, are we responsible for the missed opportunity then?
Yeah, exactly.
So
not doing the investments in innovation could actually be a sign of taking no action.
And can you save a person using AI and not going in that direction? Are you then responsible for taking that person's life?
Yeah.
Or not?
Are we killing more lives but not using AI?
Yes.
Yeah.
But let's take this ethical question.
Yes, save lives, yes.
Let's take this down to earth in a normal corporation where I find around change, people seem on middle manager level, the safe choice is to I duck the question, I don't say anything, as this was some kind of, I didn't make a choice. But essentially, not doing anything is the no choice to change or to this.
Yes.
And I think here lies a real big challenge in our leadership today, that this is okay, that we are not recognizing that the inaction, there should be accountability for inaction. Mm-hmm. To do nothing, to duck the question, is essentially saying no.
Yeah. And why is that morally okay?
Why is that morally okay? Because I would say in Swedish society, it's morally okay right now. Or this is culture. Is that fair? Or is it?
Yeah, no, I think that's a way of talking about it. Because what's the difference between animals and humans is that you have a choice. And you can think about it. You can think about responsibility. So if you have a freedom of choosing, you also have the responsibility of your choosing or not choosing. And if you have a way of thinking about it, then you are responsible. But the interesting thing about ethics and moral, that it's some way of what's normal and not. So if you are going to talk about ethics, you have to talk about what's normal and what's like the new normal. And today with COVID, we have a lot of talk about the new normal. And basically what's happened is that our behaviors have started to change our values and our thought about things. And that's how you change ethics and moral issues.
But this is maybe one of these key mechanisms we are talking about, to find the levers, which is on a cultural level, I guess, in a society or in a company.
Yeah. Well,
or is it somewhere else? Is it
no,
even
it's
bigger?
culture. It's culture. It's always culture. But it's perhaps when you behave as a human, you want to be liked. So you use the ethics around you, but you're not aware of it in everyday time. But you always want people to like you. That's why I'm nervous about talking in English, because I'm like, well, this is not my field in my day life, but it's our normal here, and then I have a question about it in my head. But if I would talk Swedish to you, then you would think I was strange in this setting, right?
I mean, changing the normal.
Because it was our deal, or in some way.
So ethics is quite closely related to the cultural values or norms in whatever group or society you're in. And they are, of course, maybe a little bit different than in different parts of the world, of course.
Of course. And then if you talk about the new normal using data, so if we take it to that level, what happens when we create a way of work with data and AI and start to work in a different way because we have help with AI systems or something like that? What happens then to our thoughts about our work? And what happens with those who doesn't use AI in their work? Are we going to have a value shift then? And how is our, how are we going to see how we use time? That's also a philosophical question that you discuss a lot when you are talking about ethics. Who are doing it? What time mean? And who is above who? Stuff like that.
And speaking more about data usage and perhaps thinking more about like different age groups. Some millennials and younger people are used to using Facebook and Instagram and Snapchat and whatnot every day, and not really caring about sharing the data that they have.
But are millennials? They are like 38. So are they young?
I'm very old guy. Sorry for that. Okay, so younger than millennials.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Generation Z.
Are we set now? Generation X.
Yeah. So sorry.
But how do you see that happening in the future? Do you think there is like an inflation, so to speak, in privacy and data safety, that it will be more a norm in the society that data is everywhere and shared with everyone, and that's acceptable? Or do you think it will actually have increased regulation going forward, so it actually will be more of a data ownership going forward? Or how do you see the future there?
I think it's we can go both way, and it's a very hard question because we have talked about it a lot at work. Are we seeing more regulations and privacy settings like that? But still, we as Swedes, we are really used to sharing data, and we don't know it. We just do it. It's like once again, personnumret. I can say it to you and to everybody, and you can probably find it on the internet if you search deep. But we also have that question that we don't want anyone to know my privacy. So it's a hard question. I think we have to talk about what we want, how we want to use our personal data, and have a discussion on where we draw the lines, because you're also. You need to have integrity of yourself. So the question is where does it stop?
So where is the line then? So let's draw up some examples. So we have in China, for example, the police using these kind of Google Glass things, and they have facial recognition, and they can just identify people, and they have this kind of wall of shame, if you heard about them.
Gamification of social control.
Yeah,
and you
social
can point
credit
out
scores and
people,
whatnot. So many things. And basically, if you cross like a cross section over the street and jaywalk, they can automatically identify you and you put it up on a wall of shame, and it can even automatically.
But is it true? Like you have your you have your personal avatar in terms of social or society index, and that actually can make you get jobs or lose jobs, or is that true?
But let me make a point here, because we have one extreme use of data and AI in for example some parts of China, and some of it is a bit inflated by media, I must say. Yes. I must defend also some of the Western press and the Chinese press, to make sure that we have an objective view of this. And even to give an example, I mean, even in Sweden we had facial recognition in this kind of gymnasieskola in Sollefteå.
Yes, we know.
And they got fined, with GDPR because they broke the regulation at that point. But we tried as well to use facial recognition and identify people like that. So perhaps we shouldn't, brag too much about ourselves.
We should be careful.
So do you think this is, this is across the line right now, at least for us in Western or in Europe and Sweden? Do you think it will continue to be that, or do you think it will be a normal day activity that cameras in schools will identify this is a drug dealer, it's not really a student in the school, and that will be something that alerts security or something if they come into the school area?
I should go back to the value question again then, and ask why it's normal in China to do that, because they also accept it. Yeah. And we in Sweden, we can ask the question, do they have a choice? But I think I believe this, there are people in China that likes the way they have their society. And that's a hard question for us, because we don't want that kind of society. Right. That's why we have this democracy and question about how do we want to live our lives. But with that said, GDPR is a problem when we want to use the new technology as face recognition, as in that school that you are mentioning. Yeah. And what we want to do in Sweden is that we are allowed to try out that kind of technology and then look at our laws and regulations system and see how can we make this okay in a Swedish way. Right. That prevent us to have that wall of shame, because we don't like that in our society yet. I hope never, if you ask me. But if you want to talk to ethics, you have to be like, you don't have any own ideas. Yeah, if you have to have a
public shaming is probably not a good thing.
Yeah, right? Probably not, because there's a problem with that anyway. The question in Sweden is how can we explore these new technologies and try to find our way in this, and we have to be very we have to take this work that we have to use personal data about you in our social systems and the public sector in a way that makes you still believe in our democracy. Right. So the question is at hand is if you don't use it and transform the public sector in a way that the voters like, then perhaps you will have another story. So,
but it's several difficult questions here. It's a sort of the catch-22. Can we need to try and experiment to move this forward, but the law doesn't allow us, and GDPR is a good example here, where it's sort of, we also, I think, needs to get the rätta prejudikaten, the case law happening, the precedents, because right now it's
the sandboxes.
Right now I'm actually exploring exactly these topics right now, and we are talking about, can we do a sandbox so we can try this out? And actually, no, you can't. And we have this internal discussion in organizations.
Why can't you have sandboxes in your business?
They referring our privacy officers referring to GDPR. Yeah. So this now becomes I have now seen several different interpretations, the letter of the law towards, looking at sort of, is this within the purpose of the data? Yeah. And where I now seen several different organizations really different in interpretation on this, which is a problem, right?
Yeah.
Because right now, we need to be able to explore and understand what data we have. Yes, but you can't do that without stating what you should use it for. Catch-22. Okay, then I can put up an hypothesis, and then so all of a sudden we end up in this conversation like very traditional old school waterfall project management that I need to do a requirement specification even to get started for back in utredningar and pre-studies for 6 months, even to understand something that it would take me 2 weeks to understand if something is feasible or not.
Yeah.
So this is a real challenge now that we need this case law, I think, as a way to get out of the hole.
Totally agree. That's our one of our biggest missions that we work on at SKR. Yeah. To make that possible, we have to have sandboxes in public sector and in the industry as well.
Of course, we need to have sandboxes.
It's the only way.
And of course, what becomes a little bit frustrating when you're doing this on a very operational level is that this is going on around you all over the place in your own organization, but it's done it's done in a different way, right? And then now we're trying to do it industrialized. We're trying to do the right thing. I'm actually trying to work correctly, compliantly, and it's sort of then you get stuck. And at the same time, so what I'm saying is we are filtering mosquitoes and slapping through elephants through the window. Yeah.
But if you were to make the GDPR all over again, what would you do?
That's an awesome question. I wish we could really. I mean, regulation
it's another
is
after work, perhaps.
And I'd love to also move into perhaps a related topic then, and one of my favorite topics, which is Elon Musk and his view on AI, and it's kind of interesting, especially when it talks about regulation.
Yeah, and you really love Elon Musk.
Yeah,
I do. Actually.
It's a love story.
Okay, so the framing, I do the framing when we need to talk to Elon Musk. If we were, how were you saying it? If we compare Leonardo da Vinci in his time versus Elon Musk in this time, you said it. I'm sorry, own up to it now, man. Are they on the same level?
That's a good question.
Do you think so?
Oof, I have to. Okay, so yeah, sure. They are.
Sorry, guy.
In a different dimension, of course, and different times. But it would be really interesting to see, what would Leonardo da Vinci do in these times, and Elon Musk in those times.
Yes.
That was the story.
That would be super interesting to see. Yeah. But just to go back to regulation, because I think it's an important topic, and then I want to, before we end, also touch a bit on religion and that topic as well, if we have some time for that. But regulation, as to say, it can be done poorly, and it can be done in a good way. And done poorly can mean it's not enough regulation or it's too much regulation, right? I hope you agree so far.
Yeah.
And GDPR is certainly not perhaps perfectly implemented, but had good intentions. And I hope you also agree with that. So that said, what is really the best way to improve regulation going forward? We know there is happening a lot in EU right now with new regulation coming in place in this year and so forth. Do you have any thoughts about regulation? Especially, I can imagine SKR, this is a very important one, given how sensitive data and important fields and high-risk applications of AI, as EU calls it, that you have in SKR applications. How should we improve regulation to make SKR more efficient in 10 years? Yeah,
we have to answer the question what we mean by that. So when you say it's a high risk, what do we mean by high risk? Because sometimes we have the feeling of being afraid of the AI because we don't know what it is. So we interpret that everything is high risk. So you have to, answer the question, what do we mean by that? Yeah. And I think that regulation from EU is have a problem with it's too fluffy in a way. Yeah, exactly. But so we have to have, a way of working with this so we can have the cases, again, the sandboxes that interpret what we mean by high risk and low risk and the gray zones, of course. And we have also to decide if we want to use AI. It's like the cabinet question. Do we want it?
and I think that
and then we have to understand what it is, because I think we want it, but then we have to, have a way of using the technology and see what's happened in our way of working and the field of what's important for us humans to take care of and protect, and then take a step.
You were into this before, that it's not actually nations that is sort of moving ahead. It's some tech giants, and clearly the regulation and however it works today, the way we have it today, I think it's actually increasing this data and AI divide, because the more knowledgeable you are exactly on what you're doing, you can manage the GDPR regulations. So it's more about our illiteracy in truly understanding the technology that makes us hesitant in what we do. While if you go to the tech giants, they can isolate the problem and the question by the law and fix it, and even enter it into their 20-page agreement.
Of course.
That you sign. So this
isn't it about risk management then? Perhaps to be better, because I think that if you manage GDPR, you are good of having like a risk assessment of your information and good on interpreting what is information to be
and isn't this the core?
Careful about.
All business, public sector maybe not, but all business is risk. There is a beta in terms of what's the return on your investment. The higher the risk, the higher the reward. And here we want to do something which is a conscious human, good for human risk in business. So there is never zero risk.
No.
And even if you have GDPR, the same risks has existed forever. And all the big security breaches, they are very far that has been sort of technology oriented, but in the end, it's more people oriented. Normal theft.
And just to comment a bit what you said as well, I mean, for the big tech giants, that they know not only how to use AI, they know exactly how to work with regulation.
Exactly.
They have the big legal teams necessary to actually fulfill all the requirements and comply with all the regulations.
Yes.
Whereas normal companies and companies not really used to using data and AI have nothing. So they actually increase the AI
regulation
divide,
has right now is accelerating the divide now, unfortunately.
But I think back to AI Sweden, we have a big opportunity there to have the legal teams for the small companies and also have the legal team for public sector or the collaboration between the both of them. So because of course it's about managing the risks and also the regulation there is. And we also say this to our municipalities because we have a network about how to use AI. And then our key take is you have to try, and you can do so much with automation today inside of the laws.
Exactly. There is surprisingly.
So you can do.
Yeah,
you
as
can
long
do
as
much.
my usual way of phrasing this is basically you shouldn't regulate the technology itself, but the effects of it.
Exactly.
So it's really what you use it for, and if it can kill someone, then it's important. So self-driving cars probably should have higher regulation than Spotify recommended music.
Yeah.
I mean, you can get really angry if you get recommended music, but perhaps you won't die from it. I'm not sure.
That's a good point.